Hi, Bother Brigade. Here's what's bothering me today. Not enough people talk about and understand mutual aid and sex work, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And so I have three lovely amigos here to start with it. And so let's start with clockwise from where I am on my screen. So, Cody, please introduce yourself.
I'm Codi Vore, and I help run SWAID Vegas. I'm also a porn star, and I've been in the industry for over 5 years now. Uh, yeah, kind of everything.
All right, cool. And down there in the corner, Xander.
I'm Xander Corvus. I am also a porn performer and a leftist video game streamer and the like. Yeah, so that's what I do.
All right, and last but certainly not least, Summer.
I am Summer Hart, and I am a sex worker and a performer, and I help run Sex Worker Mutual Aid, SWAID Vegas.
All right, awesome. Thank you all so much for being here. So, who wants to explain to me and my humble following what SWAID Vegas is?
SWAID Vegas is a mutual aid network for sex workers. Um, you know, uh, Basically, we give out micro grants and harm reduction supplies and groceries to people who are in the sex worker community, which would also be our community, who maybe can't get it on their own. Maybe they're struggling, going through something. I don't know, just because they said they need it. And we give them those things. Yep.
Okay, awesome. So, like, how do micro grants for SWAID Vegas work exactly?
So we get messages. We have a website available, swaidvegas.org/request is where you can send requests in. We get a handful of requests a day, and usually from sex workers in the community who are in need of funds. They will send us their information. We will verify that they are in fact sex workers, to make sure that we are getting money to the people who are in our community, and then we pay them out. We try to pay them out within 24 hours of the request, depending on how quickly they can get back to us with information. Usually it's much shorter than that. And really the entire kind of goal here is to be able to get people money as quickly, as discreetly, and with as little hoops to jump through, and with as little shame and humiliation as possible. We want to make this really non-invasive, basically. And we will give a grant of $100 to $200 to anybody who we can verify, and they can submit another request every 30 days.
Okay, all right, sounds good. So then, like, how did this start then? Like, so you're doing all this good work, actually supporting people in your community. So what spurred this? Like, how do a bunch of porn stars decide, you know what, we should start a mutual aid network?
I think it was the pandemic. Yeah, was kind of what really
Okay.
popped it off because during when when COVID all hit, I mean, all the strippers lost their jobs, all the like most of the escorts lost their gigs. I mean, March, what was it, March 15th, 2020, when the entire porn industry shut down, so there was no studio shooting, there was nothing. Everybody was just left to fend for themselves, and whereas most, uh, you know, real jobs, you can get not workman's comp. What's the thing I'm looking for? Unemployment and stuff. We don't really have those kind of options as sex workers, because like you know, we're we're not the real job class or whatever. So it's there was not a lot of help being offered to sex workers who lost everything they had. So we were kind of decided we would give it a shot. I think. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had,
Okay.
I had a lot of I had a lot of friends who were kind of saying stuff like this, like, well, there should be something. It's really unfair that I paid taxes, I was a dancer, like I gave a huge amount of money to into taxes, and like I should be able to collect unemployment when I got laid off of my job, and that's entirely and completely unfair that that happened to me. Actually, somebody who made a really big contribution to the fund was someone who asked for money from the fund a
Oh.
few times, and then Yeah. And then she actually was able to win some unemployment money. But it took her a really, really long time to get it because she was a dancer. And when she did, she gave a huge chunk back to SWAID Vegas so that we could give it to other people. She was only able to get it because she was able to hire an attorney. And yeah, that's kind of what it's like for a lot of people who do any kind of sexual labor. Like it's kind of treated as, you know, not a real job, and all these different
Yeah.
things. And in this case, you know, a lot of people had a really, really tough time. I mean, definitely sex workers were not the only people who were like gig workers, who had a difficult time like getting unemployment or filing for unemployment. But definitely, they were some of the people who were really, really left out.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you two have mentioned this because it is something like what of like at least $1 billion, if not several $1 billion industry in the States alone every year. And yet, you know, there's this view of we love to consume this product as a society, right? Like we see hypersexualized women in our ads, in our movies, our TV shows, hell, even the news media. But as soon as, you know, it comes to treating actual sex workers with respect and dignity, whoa, can't do that for whatever reason. It's like, please just give me the product, but nothing for you. And I remember actually seeing at one point, earlier during the pandemic, and this was before I met all you lovely fine people, I remember seeing a comment that was basically along the lines of, man, sex workers have it easy. Just, you know, do something you love and make a shit zillion dollars. What are they complaining about? What would you say to jackasses like this?
That'd be awesome.
Why don't you try? If you love it and you think it's easy to make $1 zillion, do it. I don't know what's stopping you. Actually, I do know what's stopping you. It's stigma. It's losing contact with your parents. It's not being able to bank with your bank anymore. It's not being able to have a conversation about your job. It's not being viewed as legitimate. It's being discriminated by landlords. It's feeling like an outsider in most walks of life. And that's just on the stigma side. The other side is that the vast majority of sex workers are barely scraping by. Like, this is not a job that you get rich at. There are people who get rich at this job. You can make good money doing sex work, and a lot of people do. But it's just like with any other job, the amount of people who are making good money are at the top of a big list of people who do the job. It's no different. It's just that you're only seeing popular sex workers. You're not experiencing the people who are working on the street. You're not experiencing the people who are on OnlyFans who don't have a big following. You're not experiencing those people at all. You're only experiencing your top porn stars. And even those top porn stars are usually not making that much money. So I don't know. Also, I don't think all sex workers love the job. I mean, I love the job, and I know a lot of sex workers enjoy elements of the job, or it suits them, but it's still a job. Like, you're still going to be doing work, and yeah, that's just so
That's
absurd.
absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else want to weigh in, or did Cody just cathartically speak for the rest of y'all?
Yeah, I think. Well, here's like. Oh, go ahead.
You go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say a lot of times with especially like guys who get into the industry, like I would like I'm speaking as like a straight guy who, you know, straight cis guy who gets in the industry. Like a lot of times guys like kind of run into this like yeah, I'm gonna have sex with so many hot girls, it's gonna be awesome. And then they come in and they see what it's really like on set with like a dude with a camera being like, "Hey, can you hurry up and you know what I mean?" Like it's not exactly, you know what I mean? It's like, "Hey, could you open up for the like?" People don't understand like on the porn side of it. Like, yeah, it is 100% a job. Like, luckily nowadays we have LED lighting and all this kind of stuff, because back in the day those lights were hot as fuck. And like it was not an easy thing when you're in there just.
That's why everyone was sweaty and oily back in the day. Okay, it makes sense.
Also
now.
oil scenes, but yeah.
Yeah. This video is definitely going to be age restricted on YouTube. I can tell you that.
You
I don't know,
just bleep me out a lot. Those two are wonderful, classy human beings. I am not.
Don't call me classy, okay?
Sorry, that was rude. I should have said that. I'm so sorry I called you classy.
Okay.
I'm sorry for calling you
Okay,
classy. Forgive me, oh princess of trash.
I am this
Here goes me bringing class into everything again. Sorry.
But yes, Summer, anything else you would like to add about, like, oh, it's so easy
Yeah.
to be a sex worker?
I want to talk about two parts of this. Yes, the vast majority of people who get into sex work, and sex work, I really want to point out, is an umbrella term for sexual labor services that could include anything from doing phone sex operations, OnlyFans, to literally walking the street and hopping in cars, to brothel workers, to massage parlor workers who are doing sexual services. It's anybody who is doing sexual labor for money. And I just want to point this out. The vast majority of people who are doing and selling sexual services for money are doing so because they have a difficult time finding a regular job or working in a regular job, either because of mental health issues, because of labor issues, because of immigration issues, because of not having proper documentation. There are a vast number of people who work in sex work because they are undocumented. There are a lot of people who do sex work because they need the flexibility of the hours, because they are parents, because they cannot work in a regular job because they have an arrest record, because they have X, Y, and Z issues. I have known multiple people who work in sex work because they have physical health issues, because they have mental health issues, because they have some kind of issue that prevents them in a way from working a regular job. A great number of people who get into sex work to begin with are there because they are income limited. So they're, the choices are limited, and the money that they make is highly limited. If they were people who had a lot of wealth and a lot of privilege, they wouldn't be there in the first place, to be absolutely and totally honest with you. There are definitely people who make choices to go into sex work and who could choose to leave, and I'm one of those people, right? Like, if I'm speaking for myself and my own experience, like, there was probably a point where it was like a survival job for me. And at this point I could choose to leave and do something else if I wanted, and I choose not to because I'm happiest doing it. But I want to point out to anybody who thinks like that people come into this and make a lot of money, that the vast majority of people who come into this have a very limited amount of privilege when they come in and earn survival based amounts of money.
Oh, absolutely. Which is part of why, again, I want to thank you all for being here, because this is something that, thanks to all of you and others in the community, I've learned about over really only the past year that I've known y'all. So I want more people to kind of learn what I've learned. So thank you again for being here. And Summer, I'm really glad you actually brought up that point about it also touches on a lot of women and parents. They might have other jobs. I actually know a few other sex workers who, again, like, they have an actual job during the daytime, like they work at Subway or McDonald's, but to make ends meet, they have an OnlyFans or something. And it's all very, like, tense and on the edge for a lot of things. You also brought up like a lot of migrant women, and this is how they have to make ends meet. I think that also ties into, like, the element of human trafficking. And I do want to touch on that a bit, because the sex worker industry, there are elements of human trafficking within parts of it. But as we've seen with, I think it's Exodus Cry or something like that, it's definitely, like, not accurate in the way that they're trying to show that everyone is in on it and engaged in human trafficking, when, like you point out, it's often a case of just survival. What do you like think is the distinction that people should be aware of to make a difference between someone who's down on their luck, whether they're a migrant or they're poor, or they're from some kind of minority community? What separates them and doing sex work for survival from the human trafficking aspect, and how can people identify that?
Well, let me just put it to you this way. I'm not so sure that it's really important for the average person to be identifying something like that. And the reason I would tell you is this.
Fair.
So these places, these people that go around doing stuff like this, they make their money on this. We call this, like, savior pimping, right? So they say that they're like saving these people from trafficking, when in reality they took in about $1.5 million if we're talking about Exodus Cry last year, and they serviced about $6,000 to about 23 people. 6,000.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
you can check
bad.
that out. That's a matter of
From what
public
I hear,
record.
they're terrible. So, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan of them, like, at all. But that's just
Yeah,
especially astounding. Only $6,000.
that's a matter of public record. You can go and look at their taxes. I mean, that is a genuine matter of public record. They serviced about $6,400 to about 23 people. They gave those 23 people, $250. I am telling you, like, not to brag, but goodness, we do much better than that every month. Um, and we are a tiny organization. So when I see that this massive organization takes in $1.5 million a year, gives out $6,400 a year in direct aid to people, it sickens me, because what I know is that their organization spends all of this time and all of this money trying to shove this idea down people's throat, that like all of these people are trafficked, and their goal, and they're very upfront about that, is to end the sex trade in the United States. Now, I think that they probably have good hearts. They probably like genuinely are doing this because they care about people in some way or some shape or form.
In a
But
conservative way, I
A lot of
guess.
them are grifters. Let's be real.
the way that they do it and their belief, and by the way, they work with police, and the ways that they do it, and the way that we do it in the United States is to take trafficking victims, and this is really important, and I need you to remember this. We take trafficking victims in the United States and we arrest them. If you call the police on someone you think is a trafficking victim, I need you to know that they go to jail. They will be deported if they're a person who's an immigrant. If they're a child in most states, they will go to juvenile detention center or grown-up jail. In Texas, that's one of the worst states. Safeharbor.org is a place you can check this out. You can see the statistics in your own state. We take minors to jail for being trafficked in the United
Good
States. They will be
God.
picked up and put into grown-up jail just like a grown-up, even though they're not even old enough to consent to sex. Most states have laws like this and rules like this. If they don't get put into grown-up jail, they'll get put into juvenile detention centers. They'll get sentenced for that. Here's the thing. NCOSE and Exodus Cry don't do anything to stop any of this, and they could. They have the money, they have the power, they could be helping people, they could be taking these people that are being picked up by the cops. They have the fucking resources. Sorry, please bleep me on that if you need to, but like,
You're allowed to
they
swear here.
they have the resources. They choose not to do the right thing with them. They spend their resources paying themselves, to be absolutely honest with you. And then they give out $6,000, $6,489. Don't quote me on that. Something like that. A little over $6,000 a year.
Either way, it's pretty shameful.
It's insane. And it's a matter of public record. You can look up what they gave in direct donations to individuals. Talking about that,
Summer,
honestly, makes me so angry. It makes me shake.
when they
It
get
should.
arrested,
Yeah.
just out of curiosity, when they get arrested, what happens when they get released? Are they taken to special places where they can be rehabilitated? Are they what happens to
Why do I
these
get the
people
feeling
after
this
they are
question is
arrested?
very rhetorical?
Cody and I spent some time, talking to different people about this, and we spent some time talking to trying to change some laws. So we said, hey, maybe we just shouldn't arrest people if you think they're trafficking victims, which sounds really reasonable, right? Like, if you think someone's a victim of trafficking, maybe you just
Yeah, like they were kind
arrest
of
them.
forced into it. They're not a willing participant. Like, why charge them with that? Like, that's weird to me.
You can't
Yeah,
even use it as defense in court right now.
What
also
the
some really
actual
great studies.
fuck?
Yeah, and there's also some really great studies that raids on quote unquote illegal brothels are some of the most psychologically traumatic things that happen to a person. That shows that actually it's more traumatic to be in a raid than it is to be trafficked. So we kind of said this to some people, and a room full of police officers. who were essentially like, no, we need to arrest people in order to get them to the resources. Which we asked, what are the resources? Nobody could tell us what they were. We went around trying to figure out what the resources are in our community for people who are trafficked, and basically there are none. You get arrested and then you get released from jail in the middle of the night somewhere, and that's it.
It's just on the street.
Onto the street.
And
Yeah, pretty much.
And what do you think you would do if you were a person in the sex industry who was being trafficked? If you were somebody who was being trafficked or coerced, whether it was you were kidnapped and you don't have a visa, you don't have an ID, or it was your boyfriend, or you don't have money, whatever the reason, or you're underage, whatever it is, you're homeless, whatever. You get released from jail, who are you calling?
Probably the
It's a
person
pimp.
whose contact info you have, which is, yeah, your pimp.
Yeah.
You're going to call your pimp because they have a house for you. They have a place you can stay. And you have just been given absolutely zero resources to do literally anything else.
And the cops have
people
literally
are in the
just
same
told
exact
you.
position they got left in.
The only thing that you probably got for this was a citation for prostitution or loitering. Maybe trespassing, that's another common one.
And now it's going to be harder for you to get a regular job,
'Cause you have a
which you
record.
might need to escape your situation.
And housing. You probably also cannot get housing now, especially if you've ever been popped for prostitution. Because if you've been popped for prostitution, we have a lovely law in Nevada that says landlords can be held liable for anything that happens inside of a place that they own. So
Oh.
if prostitution were to happen inside of a place that they own, say, I don't know, you were running a in-call illicit massage parlor out of the house, your landlord could be held liable. And so why would a landlord risk that if you had prostitution on your record? So
Yeah, it
we
seems far
managed-
more punitive than like reformist, you know? It's not.
Easily. And when it comes to this, the original question, what's the distinction between a trafficking victim and somebody who's a survival sex worker? The answer is who cares? And I mean,
enough.
there is a distinction. There is a distinction, right? I suppose both are highly coerced. And there's not a ton of difference. The majority of these trafficking situations are going to be coercive, financially, like financial partners, domestic violence, that kind of those kinds of situations. But every single one is treated the exact same way. And a lot of these organizations will count as many things as trafficking as possible, including completely consensual sex work. They will include as trafficking. And then maybe we could treat these people who include the people who were kidnapped, but also include all of these people who were just financially coerced in one way or another. All of these organizations that claim to be saviors of sex trafficking victims, almost every single one of them is actively doing something that makes everybody's lives worse on the entire spectrum of the sex trade. And if you want to help sex trafficking victims, fortunately, doing things that help sex trafficking victims are also the things that help sex workers as a whole. So, you know, if you want to help sex trafficking victims, it doesn't matter which sex trafficking victims you're helping or how serious it is or what kind of sex trafficking it is. The help looks the same, and the help looks like eliminating conditions of poverty, providing people with housing, providing people with health care, having resources available to people who need those kinds of things, decriminalizing sex work so that this cycle of oppression stops, so that people can feel confident reaching out to authorities because they won't be
Arrested.
put in jails and prisons for it.
And here's just a thought, throwing it out there that, you know, lawmakers don't listen to. Not, you know, I've spoken to them. Just throwing it out there. If we decriminalize sex work, then when somebody forced someone into sex work, the person who was being forced could go to the police. Right?
Like there is that, but also I don't know if any of you know this, but here in Canada, prostitution has technically been decriminalized. And the Supreme Court has even told our governments to finally get off their asses on, like, I think 3 successive governments now to actually change the laws to reflect this. The problem is they don't want to do it because stigma and, like, you know, the moral brigade would come out, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're in this weird gray limbo area where prostitution is not illegal, but the solicitation of it is. So if someone offers it and it just kind of happens to happen, it's like, oh, just kind of casually bumped into a sex worker and $100 ended up in her pocket. That's just kind of, you know, it's whatever. I didn't go out looking for the services because that's illegal. So you aren't allowed to advertise and you aren't allowed to go around soliciting. So, like, there's no brothels or anything. But of course, it's like, sure, it's technically decriminalized, but that hasn't really changed anything up here, unfortunately. That's why there is a push up here in Canada with sex workers to try and get the governments to actually change the laws. There was hope under the, like, then new Liberal government of Justin Trudeau in 2015 that they would do it because, look, they also legalized weed, so maybe Canada was about to become a really cool, fun place full of weed and hookers and blackjack. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. Instead, they just continued dragging their feet like the previous Conservative government did. So speaking as a Canadian, unfortunately, decriminalization is like it's a positive start, but it still results in a lot of gray areas and limbos that is not making anything really much safer for sex workers, and the government just kind of leaves it. So it's like this weird gray morass and no one knows how to navigate it, unfortunately. And that's part of the dangers of it up here, which, again, to sort of bring it back to like why we're here, of like talking about SWAID and stuff, and we're talking about parents and children. I want to promote something that I know you people have shared. It's not like a tour drive, but you're doing, like, you're promoting Amazon wish lists for sex workers for their kids, so people can buy toys for sex workers. Is that limited just to Nevada, or it can be for, like, anywhere in the States?
Done it for anywhere in the States. Yeah.
Wherever.
I think one of them on there is from Canada too, actually. So.
Well, okay then. I think that's another great thing that you guys are doing with SWAID, of also, like, reaching out not just to sex workers, but also helping, you know, the families they might have. What are some other things that SWAID does to help sex workers in the industry beyond just the micro grants?
SWAID was conceptualized from us being kind of a smaller group in Las Vegas. The sex worker, and it's a niche group of sex workers. It's mostly online performers. A small group of us sex workers have formed a community. And I think that within the sex work industry, community is really, really, really important because we understand each other. We can exchange resources and information and get each other help when we need it. And it's so easy to become isolated when you do this work. So really, SWAID was started as just kind of a fund for that space, kind of. It wasn't, that's why it's SWAID Vegas and not SWAID for the entire United States, which is what we are. Which is what we became, because it turns out that was needed and we were able to fill that gap. But that's not what
that was realized pretty quick too.
Yeah, that happened immediately.
Yeah, like it's like we. I remember when we first started off, when we were talking about that, we were like, "Hey, we just got a thing from the UK." Like, we're like, "That's not in Vegas."
Yeah.
I mean,
well, technically there is that, that international
fountain.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got it really quickly, and I think, and so something that SWAID has been doing is we have had some events for people within the community. There are, especially locally, to kind of build that, and I think that goes a really long way. And not all of that is directly connected to SWAID, but I think it's really important. And I think if there are any sex workers listening, I think it's very important. Try to find sex workers in your area and try to create some communities, some small communities that know each other, that can answer questions like, what to do if I have a this or that, what to do about this client, how much do I charge for customs, what happens when I have a prolapsed anus, what...
Like I said, it's going to be so age restricted.
That's a real question. That was...
I believe it.
That was an example. But like actually very valuable information to have. And having a community does that. And so I don't know, that's just something that I guess SWAID is participating in.
I think that's great. Like that it's not just about micro grants. It's like, oh, look, we got some sanitary pads, provide, condoms, testing kits. Yeah.
Needles.
Sorry?
Needles. Plan B. Narcan. What else I got in my closet? Condoms. Pregnancy tests.
We
I don't know, I think
glucose test strip once.
Yeah, we bought a couple of glucose monitors actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
But
yeah, sometimes some medical accessories,
Yeah.
baby clothes, and a lot of groceries.
Well,
A lot of groceries.
and also, I mean, and that's important. Like American healthcare, as I'm sure you've heard, is wildly expensive, and a lot of times, a lot of sex workers. I mean, legitimately, like it is still a check to check, job for us. You know what I mean? It's not like we don't really get a salary, So the idea of this whole thing like we were talking about earlier about like, oh, you just go into sex work and you make all this money. The American medical system still makes it so, dude, if I broke my fucking arm, I'm fucked. Like, you know what I mean?
And not in the fun way, no.
I can't afford. Yeah, not in the way I enjoy. Like, yeah, it's like this is like even like little things like it's not even a little thing to somebody who is diabetic and stuff. Like having a glucose, that's important as fuck, and the clean needles are great for that too. But it is not something where, sorry, that was just going back to like the whole idea of like, oh yeah, we just get into this, we get all this money. It's like, no, we're still here in America, and you know what I mean, in a system that doesn't really look out for workers of any kind, much less sex workers. But
and sex workers as a whole, the population represents there are a lot more people with disabilities in the sex work industry, and also people who are sex and gender diverse. So, when we're helping sex workers, that happens to include a lot of marginalized identities primarily, and those people usually need more need blood glucose strips and test kits and shit like that.
Yeah, because everything's sold for a profit in the center of modern day capitalism.
So expensive.
It is unfortunate, but again, I think that's it just shows that your organization and your community are doing really good work, not just for your local community, but for the sex worker community as a whole, which I think is really great and important, especially these days with the pandemic and just, oh geez, we have to do all these new things and the world is changing, but we still got to hold each other, our loved ones, our communities, our fellows close. I think there's a very human message in that. But some of what all you have talked about now, I guess we can kind of shift towards some like the other part of this. Now that we've talked a bit about like SWAID Vegas and what it is, and like how it started. Why Las Vegas as opposed to like a bigger, fancier city full of more people and more tourists, like say California or like Florida, like why not set up shop for all the fathers in like outside of Orlando for Disneyland or something like that? Like why Las Vegas as opposed to like other bigger destinations in the States?
We live here. Yeah.
Like just born and raised, and we're like, yeah, fuck it.
No, I mean, it's not like we moved to a place to set up a fund. If you're gonna do something for a community, do it in your community. You don't want to go into somebody else's community, and go do it in your community. That's where
our initial thought was like, we don't have that much, but we have a little bit, and we could give a little bit to some people, and we can't give it to everybody, so maybe we could just give it to the people that live here, and that would work. And it grew a little bit, and we've had, Xander has been really instrumental in that, and like you have helped us, and like so many people have like signed on and been like, oh, like talking about us or like given us donations. We've gotten donations from like across the world too, which is crazy to think about.
Solidarity with the
like,
international community.
totally, it's crazy. And like people reached out to us and stuff and given us money, which means we can help like a greater expanse of people. And at the moment, we're kind of just doing the US. But you know, when we first started this, if somebody said, "Hey, I'm in New York," we'd say, "Oh, we'll try to help you find a different mutual aid in New York, or in that area, or one that's international." And we were pretty good about that at the beginning. But now we're saying, "No, like we'll help you and we'll get you stuff in New York." And we expanded to say like our area is like, you know, the Southwest.
Okay.
Mission
And
control.
yeah, yeah. So we've been able to expand it because I mean that's really successful to me because I genuinely envisioned in the beginning of this being like, yeah, we're gonna say Vegas and hopefully we'll have a little bit of money to give some people who are sex workers in Vegas if they need it.
So
And then
like,
it just,
is there like
expanded.
sorry?
Oh no, I said it just expanded.
It's
Yeah.
sometimes that happens, right? Like my recent example, probably cut this out of the interview because it's not really that relevant, but you know, my recent example of just kind of offhandedly making a bit of a joke of, yeah, you know what, let's make it interesting, push to 3,000. I'm 300 subs away. If I get the 300 by the end of November, I'll donate $300. And then people said, oh, you know what, I'm going to match that. And then other people said, I want in on this too. And then all of a sudden it's like $1,000 going to Halifax Mutual Aid. It's like, this started off as just like kind of a joke and I didn't think would succeed. And now it's like, oh, now I really want it to succeed. Like, God damn.
Yeah.
Like, is there like a really big sex worker community in Vegas? Because, you know, oh, it's Vegas. It's like a casino party town. So it's just like really massive there.
I love the Vegas sex worker community. I fucking love it. I think Las Vegas, there's a few hubs for different types of sex work. Las Vegas has a pretty big hub for strippers, and very recently it's become a bigger hub for mainstream porn, and it has been a hub for like cam girls and online models, and that sort of thing. Also, I mean, we do have brothels here, which you can't say about a lot of other places. So we have brothel workers who are dealing with a whole different kind of battle with legality and being respected for their work. And then of course we have workers on the street and who work from ads and things like that as well. So yeah, Las Vegas has a very diverse sex worker community, and we are a little bit of a hub for a handful of different types of sex work.
Well, I guess that's actually the perfect segue then, because we have talked a bit about this, and so now like we've covered a lot of, you know, everyone's involvement with SWAID. Although I guess we haven't really talked much about how, Xander, I think you like to refer to yourself as the SWAID cheerleader. Like you kind of just go out and be like, "Hey, come donate!" Like that's your thing.
Like a hype man, cheerleader. Yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah.
These twos are like the minds, and obviously Ava and Tegan as well. But
so they're the brains and you're the
gorilla
brawn.
brain himbo. I'm the gorilla brain himbo who beats his chest and asks for donations. That's what I do.
You're literally the muscle. You're the
also,
brawn. They're the brains. Yeah. All right.
It's the extra donations, but it's also the extra notoriety and the extra reputation and getting us connected with people like Bothered and other people who can get the word out and talk about sex worker rights. And so I think that public facing element is so important.
No, yeah, I mean, like I think we're all known pretty well in the sex work, or in the like in certain circles of porn and sex work in general.
I mean, the fact that I said your names to some friends of mine
like
and they said like, "Oh, wait, yeah, I've heard of them. I've seen this." I'm like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
That's high, the like famous level of sex work. So I think it's kind of our duty and our obligation to try to have a lot of solidarity with the rest of the industry and get the word out as much as we can, because we have this platform that a lot of other sex workers don't have. And it's really often anybody listen to you as a sex worker in any capacity on serious topics. So I think it's important to use that platform.
And I would say like we are definitely in a privileged, by comparison, place to a great deal of sex workers, and that's yeah. I mean, I spent most of my life as a destructive, both inwardly and outwardly, alcoholic who just like was planning on dying soon. Basically, was my thing. So I didn't really, of course I was loving and nice to everybody I could be, but I was very directionless, and kind of my whole plan with life was like the 27 Club thing. I'm like, I'm just gonna party and be an idiot until I die, and hopefully it's not. And then I hit 28, and I was like, fuck, real life, god damn it, you know what I mean? And so I think in my like crazy, alcoholic and depression and everything else, and all my other mental health fun times, I made it through all that somehow. And I guess like a day just kind of dawned on me where I was like, dude, like help other people not have to go through that if you can. You know what I mean? Just do something outwardly better. And then also I stumbled on Michael Brooks and certain other YouTubers and stuff, and I was like, oh, like the way I already think about shit is a thing, and it's leftism. And what are these cool things that people do in leftist circles? And I was like, oh shit. And I learned about all this stuff, and that's how I ended up, meeting you. And then, just it all kind of coalesced in my storm of a life, kind of coalesced into this.
Well, I'm glad you're still here with us. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, me too. It's nice.
And so like the next sort of like question I have to sort of tie into that, with like sex work, and you said, Cody, about it's important to have this platform. So like what radicalized each of you? Was it something that happened like before getting into sex work or during sex work? Like what kind of made you sort of stop and look around and say, shit's fucked and I want to fix it, or at the very least complain about it? Like what was that moment for each of you?
I don't know if there was like a moment. I feel like I've kind of been feeling like that a really long time, and I feel like it just kind of gets worse. I feel like it more and more all the time. Like all the time I hear about new things that I'm just like, wow, that's fucked. And
I'm sorry to do that to you. That's my channel.
Yeah, I do. It's true though. I mean, it really does. It helps. It helps, brother. It's funny. I subscribed to you on YouTube, and my 7-year-old nephew like was on his tablet watching a video of yours the other day, and I was like, anyway,
don't know if my content is suitable for 7-year-olds.
I mean, it seemed fine.
Okay, all right.
In any case, yeah, but there's just been a lot of stuff. I feel like maybe I've been this way since college, and honestly, probably know that, grew up in a conservative state, and I was born in Texas, and I think abortion rights kind of like pushed me over the edge.
Okay.
Then I kind of was all of a sudden like in a place where I wanted like freedom and autonomy over my own body, sex worker, and I don't know, here we are, I guess.
My answer is kind of similar. I mean, it's something I think I felt for a long time, but to different degrees, and it changed flavors over time. But like, I mean, I grew up in a military police family, and I was heavily indoctrinated into the like cult of the United States of America, the mythology surrounding it, and so it was just kind of a gradual unpeeling of that belief and those systems, maybe starting in high school and through college, especially, and then, becoming a sex worker. I mean, it just keeps getting more and more egregious. Like you just start to realize, like, at first it's like, oh, maybe they're wrong about this. Maybe it's an exaggeration, but America is still the greatest country on earth, right? Like, we're still the most free. It
come
starts
on.
like
we
that,
got all this money, big military. Everyone wants to be BS. Everyone wants to come here.
I grew up with like Michael Savage playing on the radio, like blasting into my ear. Like Fox News was on constantly, and I was into it. Like I was genuinely into it. You would not have wanted to know me back then. But I was also like genuinely very curious and like open-minded, and I was like, oh, oh, fuck, this shit's not right. It's not clicking. Once I started learning more things, because they hide that shit from you when you go to school. And then I started going to college, and like that stuff they start telling you that stuff, you know? Like I read Lies My Teacher Told Me is one of my favorite ones. Oh boy, and that includes a whole lot of the misinformation we talk about in textbooks about American history, and like that whole like deeply ingrained dogmatic belief system that's just fantasy bullshit. Like it is insane how much and
We
also
have that
learning
up
about
here
language.
too. You're not alone.
Yeah, and also learning how our use of language reinforces these structures and all of this kind of shit, you know? It's like when we say like we discovered America, and it's like, who's we? Who do you mean when you say we? You mean white people. You mean white people, because non-white people were here. Do you like we have it in our language that we means white people. It is white supremacy and baked so deeply into our language and into our like whole system. And like, yeah, every year you learn something more. It was only maybe a few years ago that I started to get really, really angry about carceral systems, specifically. Like, I think it was like realizing the you know, that switching in the amendment, you know, in the abolishment of slavery, where it says, you know,
Except
for punishment of a crime, and looking at all of that and being like, oh shit, like we're enslaving people for profit. Literally.
Yep, it's
Literally. There's
messed.
no, it's not kinda, it's not sorta like slavery. It is. And once you start, the more you see, it just
So it just cascaded from there, and now here you are, Comrade Codi.
sure. Yep.
All right, and Xander, what radicalized you?
Yeah, mine started with, like I said, like Michael Brooks was it was stumbling on the Majority Report, and then actually Janice Griffith was talking to me about some stuff one day, and that was one of the things where they had mentioned just some like socialist kind of stuff and mentioned some people to me that I should check out, and I did. And there was also people at the Kink Armory when I was working for Kink who were like socialists and stuff, who I ended up just thinking, like that's kind of funny and whatever, and I was just like, whatever, cool, like socialism, like whatever. And I was actually my mom's family is like hyper right wing, and so anything that I said as a kid, like I remember when Obama was like you know, just being elected or running, and like the whole healthcare thing, and like my grandma like yelled at me and was like, "What are you, a socialist now?" Because I basically was like, "I don't understand why people shouldn't have healthcare. That sounds kind of cool." And then they were just like, "Communist Russia!" It just like went on their like, you know, their whole thing, and I was like, and now I'm like, yes, communist. Yes, comrade grandma. But like. No, it was a lot of just like learning from people like that who are so well read and just understanding about all these kinds of things. And it was, you know, there was even people like Hakeem and stuff like that. Like hearing somebody who's not from like white America people talking, like hearing an Iraqi man like talk about like socialism and talk about like, you know, imperialism and American exceptionalism and all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, this is beautiful. Like, it's so incredible to hear someone from somewhere that's not in this indoctrinated ass place actually talk about these things, and who has been under the heel of the imperialist like war machine forever. You know what I mean? It's like, it's really, all those things really like touch me, and it
really resonated with you, yeah?
That's just got the ball rolling for me, you know, and
It's
ever
a
since that.
non-radical concept. It's a non-radical concept. So like it seems radical because of like the way. Oh man, I can't get into this whole story and talk about this, but like I can't. You're. Oh man.
Oh no.
I can't, and I won't. But there's this really great book, and I won't go on and on about it. But by David Graeber, and basically he says that there was never any talk about inequality or what inequality meant, or any discussion of the structure of inequality in Europe before Europeans had contact with the New World in the Americas. And in the Americas, it was the lens of critique of Native people, specifically Iroquois people, who saw them as disgusting for the massive amount of inequality that happened specifically in France, and gave them this massive amount of critique. And it made them turn a lens on themselves in a way that they did not like. And they spent all of this time actually developing the entire field of economics over this.
I could rant about that forever, trust me.
Trying to like figure out like, well, why do we have inequality, and like why have we created all of these like systemic inequalities? And like basically what they end up with, like the place that they end up at is like, well, these people don't know what they're talking about. They live in simplistic societies and we don't. And which is utterly and completely not true. Yeah, and that's like a huge basis for like quote unquote economy, for like class privilege, for like racism. It's like all wrapped in this like very powerful critique of inequality that they face when they meet people from another place. And it's like this defensive reaction that Europeans have. It's
That's really interesting.
Like, what's that book called?
The name of the book, it's called the Dawn of Everything.
The Dawn of Everything.
By David Graeber?
David Graeber and another David. Two Davids.
Okay, all right.
What? There's two Davids?
I know, man. There's too many Davids out there.
I had a dog named David.
Oh, okay then.
My real name's Mike. Don't talk about there being too much of anything, all right?
So, yeah, thank you all for your lovely and relatively diverse answers and touching on it. But there's another point that you've touched on that I know we've kind of skirted around before, about privilege and whiteness. Let's talk about that a bit in the sex industry, because there's a lot of preconceived notions in the sex industry, and any casual look at like a categorized porn website will be like, "Hi, yes, welcome. Would you like petite Asian? Would you like a big MILF? Would you like ebony?" And you're like, wait, why is this all a thing? And like, why is there like race play and all these assumptions of like, oh yes, Asian women are submissive? And here I am being like, I literally grew up in a community where there were several infamous tiger moms. So not in my book. Yeah, well, the tiger moms is in like, they were really like harsh towards their kids, like drilling them. Like I remember in high school, there was a girl, she was in tears. She was in tears because she only got an 83 on the history test. And here my house, I was like, oh, good, I did relatively well on this one. I got a 71. It's like completely different operating levels, right?
Right.
And so, you know, like I know there's race and stuff in it. Like I think a term is being blacked or something like that. Like there's some weird stuff out there. Yeah, Summer is immediately cringing. Sorry, Summer, but I do want to talk about this because it's not something that often gets talked about. And now that we have this opportunity, like, what are your thoughts on this? And like, the lack of like marginalized voices in the sex worker industry. Like, yeah, I'd love to know people's thoughts on this.
People are like, why does this exist? And I'm like, because you consume it.
Yeah.
Well, it's the marketplace.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can think of art as any art. You can think of porn as anything like anything that's consumable. People make what people click on and buy. So if you're wondering why does that exist, it's because it's marketable. I don't know why it's marketable. I just know that people buy it because if they didn't, it wouldn't exist. People sometimes will look at pornography and be like, why does this type of pornography exist? It offends me. I'm upset by that. And I ask you, when you see that, to literally take those fingers and go like this with them, because it's people watch it. That's why it exists. Yes, there's a massive amount of I mean, that's to say nothing about like the other side of this, which is that there are problems with like racism inside of our own industry that are huge and pervasive, and like probably need to be dealt with, like, with us and by us. Like pay gaps for performers, for instance, specifically on the porn side.
Yeah.
That's a sad continuation of a societal trend, I'm afraid. It's like women get paid less than men. If you're a woman who happens to be non-white, you get paid even less than white women. So
actually, this would be one of the few places where women tend to earn more than men. But actually, I'm specifically talking about Black performers. Black women tend to earn less money than white women in this industry, and Black performers tend to earn less money. And sometimes there is this issue where white women specifically will ask for more money to work with a Black performer. That is something that is not super uncommon. There are people that won't work with Black performers. There is definitely racism in the industry in that way. And when I say pay disparity, I'm actually talking about the fact that, like, it has happened to me that I work for the same company who at the same time, at the same shoot as another girl, and they straight up offered her, and the girl's Black, and they straight up offered her half of what they offered me.
Wow.
It's happened multiple times that I know about. So
sheesh.
I don't always or even usually know what other people are getting paid, but like, one time when someone was staying at my house and working here in town, she was telling me how much she had earned. And one time we were on set together and she was paid half of what I had earned for this exact same scene. And again, we kind of set our own rates and stuff like that. But I do still think that, like, Black female performers in particular get lowballed all the time.
Oh yeah.
And they also are made to feel like if they ask for too much, they'll get passed up because they're lucky to be hired by this company or whatever it is. They need the exposure or whatever, so they don't want to ask too much because they don't want to get passed up. And that's just because a lot of companies will seem to value white, thin performers more.
Truly and honestly, we're obviously not the right people to be talking to about this.
Like, understandable, but like we had like touched on it before, and so I just wanted to actually like ask the question with people in the industry. Obviously, yes, I would love to interview other people that have been like in other elements of the sex worker industry, or about interview Barbie Crystal if she had the time or the energy to do so and get her perspective on it. Like, yeah, but I still wanted to ask the question, and thank you for providing a very robust answer. Anyone else want to weigh in?
Yeah, I guess because I'm a white appearing mixed person. I've always kind of had a massive aversion to the idea of like sexualizing anybody based on their race. You know what I mean? That's always kind of bothered me.
Hey, that's my thing.
Yeah, it's like that is. And the other thing we were saying about the pay gap, right? There are a lot of Black male performers who get put in, who get put in a situation where they have to shoot, have to in like the capitalist sense of like, oh, you can't really choose just not to work or you die. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like I got to put food on the table
also
tonight.
Also feel bad about shooting racist content, but do it because they don't really have another choice because this industry has cornered them into that market. You know what I mean? Like I've had one of my buddies, like I've told this story a couple times, but like one of my buddies who is a Black performer who we were on a panel thing a long time ago about this. And, I was like, dude, how many times have you played a doctor versus how many times have you played a thug? And he was like, I've never played a doctor. And I was like, yeah, like, you know what I mean? For a while there during when everything with BLM was really popping off and when that was first coming around, porn was like, oh yeah, like we support this. And then all of a sudden it disappeared. A couple months later, they were like, oh yeah, let's go back to fucking racist shit. Because everybody forgot, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like.
Well, and it goes back to Summer's earlier point about consumption, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
There are, like, honestly, there are some movements among like performers, specifically independent performers. Like my personal advice too is like if you want to see like good authentic content, especially of performers of color, just broadly, you should buy the like individual clips. You should support their OnlyFans. You should support them directly.
Yeah.
Like you know what, like I think sometimes people go and watch stuff like this because they'd just like to see in some ways like themselves represented, or they'd like to see a representation of themselves, but like the content itself like turns out to be like horrible or racist or demeaning. And I think that has to be horrifying and deeply depressing. I I I wish this kind of stuff would go away, and I wish these kind of representations in porn would go away. And I think they're gross and awful. I would also tell you, like, it's kind of crazy too, because you don't, this is like, I've seen the way that some of the stuff that I've done has later been marketed, which was like in no way how the scene would be shot. Like,
Wow.
well,
Yeah, they do have a lot.
Wow. Okay, so this is like totally misleading as well. Wow.
I mean, there's nothing, how about this? I can even think personally about a particular scene that I did with a performer who's a personal friend of mine, that we shot, that had no racial overtones whatsoever. That later, when it was marketed, and all of this language that was like highly racialized, and the name of the scene is highly racialized as well. I think neither one of us would have shot this knowing something like that. And then to see it um, later on, kind of, both of us were kind of like, okay. I mean, that's another thing, is like a lot of times you do a scene like this as a performer, and of course, like there's, overtly, this is honestly like sex in a hotel room. This was like a sex scene in a hotel room where we were like strangers, like meeting up, kind of a thing, like a Tinder kind of a thing. But they changed it to be very very racial, actually.
Jeez.
And then that's about marketing. And so I think the thought is like it's not going to sell unless we market it to be racially fetishized.
Yeah, which is like it's weird, and I can actually kind of speak to this a bit because growing up and like as a teenager, identifying as a Latin American like kid, right? I would go around saying I'm Latino or I'm Hispanic, right? Like my dad's from, I'll just say somewhere in South America, and he himself kind of gets it on both ends because he's not only an immigrant from Latin America, and so he speaks Spanish and he's Catholic, well, to an extent, but also he's black, or rather black passing, so he gets it doubly. And growing up and seeing like racism thrown his way and what passed for representation for other people like me was here's someone named Diego Sanchez, but he's just a normal kid like the rest of them who doesn't speak with an accent, and there's like no element of his culture at all that's mentioned. It's just like another suburbanite kid. And if we're lucky, we're the side character to like someone's cup, or we're some silly little Latin man who's just like, oh man, I really miss how my mom made the chimichanga, or like it's always something like that, right? And then for women, gotta be like beautiful. Like if you're not like Salma Hayek, absolutely get fucked, right? And we should be thankful for this because look, we have more roles than just like a fucking cholo thug in some kind of like cop drama movie or something like that. We should be thankful that our women are being fetishized, and that young versions of us are being shown as normal, i.e. white, or it's like, look, we're part of the authoritarian regime that's dealing with the other ones that are like us that are not good, the thugs. Like that's quote unquote representation for me growing up. And seeing that online, I'm like, big sexy Latina, it's like, Latin American women are more than that, having literally grown up around them all my goddamn life. So can we maybe chill on that? But it's like you said, it's like this hypersexualization of race and like to a certain extent class, right? Like the whole, I'm some wealthy lady and here comes my little pool boy. Like there's just a lot of stuff like this, but like Summer said, it sells it. And I don't know what like the solution might be, if there ever is one, but it's just like it's this massive industry that is worth billions of dollars that is consumed, but still organizations like SWAID need to exist and help people out. And there's all these misconceptions because people don't see what goes on behind the finished product. And that finished product, like someone was pointing out, could be just, what's originally a nice tender moment is instead like marketed as this very racialized thing. And people don't see, like Xander said earlier, about the big hot lights, and there's a dude with the camera saying, come on, hurry up, buddy, I got another shoot soon. Like people only see the finished product as opposed to everything that goes into it and the entire industry behind it. And so with that, I actually want to talk a bit about what was the most surprising thing for each of you when you started getting into sex work.
That bang bus wasn't real. Blew my mind. Just kidding. No, okay. I knew it wasn't real. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. I think honestly, and this might sound stupid, but I think it was when I first started like meeting like performers I'd watched before when I was like whatever, and just being like, oh, these are just normal dorky ass fucking people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know. Like because I got in when I was fucking 20. I was dumber than I am now. And like I saw these like, there's these people you kind of idolized and stuff, and then you meet them and you're like, oh, you like play D&D and are just like a fucking nerd. I mean, there are still like there are people who are very, I'm a porn star. Like, fuck you, but like, you know what I mean? Like there are those people, but it was really just like becoming friends with and just meeting these people that I had this like parasocial or whatever idea about, and just like really just seeing them as like a normal fucking person. Like that really blew my mind in a lot of ways. I think that was something that was really cool for me. I don't know. Which is like also like a lot of like with us streaming, with us doing all the things that we do and like interacting with fans now, I think people are able to have that in a better way. Like they get to see us be on like Twitch, raising money for SWAID as just like dorks playing video games, and that's kind of cool. I think that was the first thing that came to my mind, but I'm sure they have exciting things as well.
Yep. All right. Who's next?
I don't know. Actually, like one of the coolest thing, I mean, this is not like the most surprising thing, but maybe one of the coolest things I think about sex work is like this ability it gives you to like the freedom it gives you to like explore some of your own sexuality and the things that you enjoy or like the things that might turn you on. I think that I grew up in a way that was like super sexually repressed, and for me, like being able to find some freedom or like maybe even an excuse to like explore some of those things or just like make some of those things okay or acceptable as a woman, I guess, feels really cool, and it has felt really cool and rewarding in some ways. Being able to share that with other people has been really cool. I think like it's like really looked down on a lot, and that's like the bad, dirty part or something. It's actually one of like the coolest fucking things in the world. Like if you feel a genuine connection with somebody over something, and then like it also was like a connection to yourself. I don't know how well I'm describing that right now, but like it's been one of the most, I guess that's also like surprising. I learned things about me or myself or like what I like and have been for 10 years or so by just getting to interact with people in a way that's like sexual and in some ways like forbidden, and it's pretty cool.
Okay.
That was
And
a
last
great
but not least,
answer.
Cody.
That was really good. Yeah.
Oh my God, no, that was a great answer, Summer. I really definitely identify with that. Oh shit. For myself, I guess, I mean, mostly just that I love it. I guess I don't know, I didn't think I was gonna hate it, but like, I mean, I didn't like everything when I started, and then I figured out what I liked about sex work and the areas that I thrived in and the areas I enjoyed, and I was very surprised to find out I very much liked doing mainstream porn. I mean, I got into this as a cam model, and I was like, I'll just do like silly shows for people, and like, I'm not gonna have sex with people on camera. And then I'm like, oh wait, I love having sex with people on camera. I love it. And yeah, I guess I was surprised that I liked it this much, and also surprised that, I mean, I don't know if this is a surprise, but like, now all my friends are sex workers for the most part, or adjacent, and this is my community now. Like, I didn't get into this job to like, I didn't realize when I started this job that this was going to become a part of my identity, my culture, my community, my friends, my family, my politics. I didn't realize how much it was going to completely change my whole life. And I'm so grateful I did it, because I'm like, I feel like I have been so enriched by the people I've met in this industry. The people in this industry have ideas and ways of looking at the world that you just don't see in a lot of communities. It's just like, because people who get into sex work, they have to make a choice to go into something that is forbidden or that is wrong, and they have to contest with that and figure out a way to deal with the fact that like society is wrong or society is messed up. And so they have the most interesting perspectives. They come from so many different places. They are so diverse. They are so smart and innovative. They have the craziest ideas. Some of them are just a hoot to be around. Some are a handful, and you only want them in small doses. Some of them are like your best friends for life. And some of them do really, really incredible work for the community. And yeah, sex work is, I know that this isn't the case for everybody in the industry, and I feel really lucky that it is the case for me. But like, for me, this changed my life, and I'm so glad I did it. And I didn't think that was what was going to happen when I started. I did this to make some cash and to have fun on stream.
And now here you are, part of SWAID Vegas. It's like, oh geez, how did I end up here? All right then, life is full of surprises like that. But thank you all for sharing your stories and perspectives. I really appreciate that. If we still have a bit of time, I would like to talk a bit about perhaps some more, like, again, returning to some slightly darker material. I've seen people become surprised at the notion that sex workers can face instances of like sexual assault. People understand like they're stalkers or, fans, but there's a very real distinction there in my opinion.
Yeah.
I know, Xander, you have some stories like those were wild to hear about, but like what would you all as sex workers want to say to people who may not know much about, the creepy fans, the stalkers, the fact that you absolutely can be, sexually assaulted and abused in this industry, that especially for, women getting into the backs of cars and stuff, like there's a very real safety issue there. What would you say to try and educate these people?
I had a couple thoughts on this, a couple short thoughts.
Yeah.
The first one being, there is, and I have seen this, especially with regard to, for example, the Ron Jeremy trials, where, if you don't know, Ron Jeremy is a popular porn star, and he raped a lot of people and assaulted a lot of people sexually. He is in prison for it now, I believe. And when but it's been a long time coming, and the allegations have been around for a long time. And when those did start surfacing, we got a lot of people outside of the porn industry asking questions like, how could you rape a porn star? Like as if being in the sex industry means you automatically consent to every kind of everything. No,
yeah, you consent to everything all the time, right?
Everything all the time. It's insane. And they just don't see that. And I don't actually know how to ever convince those people. I don't know how to convince those people. But if you're watching now, hopefully you see that, we're real living humans, people who, when we're not, having a discussed, consented scene, have the same exact bodily autonomy as every single other person. The job we do does not give anybody any more right to our bodies or to our time. And the second thing I want to say is that if you are a fan of a performer, and this goes for people in the sex industry, and it also goes for people like Bothered Boy. If you are a fan and you are having a parasocial relationship with somebody, or you are upset that somebody isn't sharing enough with you, I want you to keep in mind that there is a huge toll that comes with being a performer and being authentic with your audience, showing them lots of your life. It's something that's very, very highly valuable and something we're all told we need to do if you are in the influencer space or you are trying to make a name for yourself on the internet. And if you find a sex worker or a porn star and she isn't very down to earth with you or isn't very sharing of her stuff, don't be mad at her for that. She's making a pretty smart choice, honestly.
Yeah,
She's
I
not
can't
doing
blame
this.
'em.
Yeah, she's not doing this to become friends with everybody she talks to, and becoming friends with everybody you talk to comes at the price of developing stalkers, of developing these unhealthy relationships that happen a lot. And that's not to say it's bad to be authentic. I am a very authentic person with my audience. And I know Xander and Summer are pretty authentic as well. And I have experienced the bad sides of having that. And it's a choice that I'm making, and it's one that you shouldn't take for granted.
Anyone that you see, if you've seen someone having sex, that doesn't mean they want to have sex with you. I don't know. That seems pretty obvious. Being sexual or sexy in some way is not it does not mean someone consents to being touched. Displaying sexuality does not mean someone consents to sex. Yeah. Even on a set, anywhere at any time, I would tell somebody to stop if I wanted to stop, even if I was in the middle of having sex with them, and I was getting paid to be there that day, and I was shooting, and there were 10 people in the room, and I could and would tell someone that I was done and didn't want to come back. It's crazy that anybody thinks that like that shouldn't be a thing, or like that means, you know, yeah, that means nothing. Consent at any point at any time from anybody means absolutely nothing in 5 minutes or anything like that. It doesn't mean you consent to everyone or anything.
Yeah. And sadly, there's a lot of people who do think like that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, which is like why I did want to ask, like, what would you say to like try and make them stop and think, because like I know I understand that, I know y'all understand that, but it's that like you said, Cody, there's a lot of people out there where it's, oh, how can you do that? It's like, well, if you actually unpack a lot of the societal problems and inequality and aspects of class, race, misogyny, etc., it all kind of starts to make a lot of grim sense for why that's a thing, and you haven't done your job as the media to actually parse that out, which is very frustrating. But it's,
I think if I'm giving them a lot of credit, it's like the same way that we with sex workers, with the mentally ill, and with people who go to prison and jail. We count all these people as second-class citizens. And the reason we do that, I think, if I'm being really nice, is because we don't want to believe that we're being horrible to these people and that they're going through bad things. And so it's better for us to just compartmentalize those people as subhuman in some way. And just to say, what happens to them doesn't fucking matter, because they chose their lot in life. They're an addict, they're a criminal, they're a sex worker, they're choosing this, they're disgusting, they're sinful. And so I don't have to care about the fact that they experience higher rates of abuse and murder and homelessness and poverty. I don't have to think about that, and I don't have to care. And I am going to just turn that outward at them and say, that's your fault, because I don't want to have to believe in my head that we live in an unfair system that does this to people. That's my most generous take on that. I think some people are just genuinely really hateful.
I'm inclined to agree. I think there are some people out there that just really love to hate things. But Xander, you haven't really had a chance to answer those very difficult questions.
Oh, well, I mean, for the crossing of, like, I don't know, the parasocial boundary or whatever, I've definitely had a lot of wild experiences with that shit.
I'm aware. Ooh.
Yeah, I've had people show up to places, and I've been sent bullets. I've been sent all types of crazy shit. Like people like, it's crazy. Yeah, it's really crazy to think about. But I think that like most people aren't gonna be like that. I think most fans of a person, most enjoyers of porn aren't gonna be that level of invasive or abusive, but the this kind of like everything kind of goes back to this shit with me. But we live in a country and in a planet that just really needs mental health care universally as well, because I think that would actually be something that stops a lot of this from happening. If people had ready access to therapy, if people had ready access to psychological help, then a lot of the things that we do tend to go through with stalkers and just scary obsessive people might not happen so much, because that kind of behavior, it goes beyond a fan thing to an obsessive, dangerous mental health issue that needs to be handled by a professional and not a sex worker who's being hounded by a person. You know what I mean? That is all something that comes from a deep-seated place of sickness in a person's mind, and I think that it's not something we can do anything about. And I've had to kind of learn that about myself too, like in therapy as well, as like it's not my fault that this is happening. Sometimes people are just attracted to something. Yeah, there's just something twisted that happens, and it's tough. But I think honestly, the level of stuff that I think that we all know that each other have gone through with this kind of thing is not something that I could be like, hey, don't be a dick. You know, it's like the people who are feeling this way or feeling this obsessive about somebody who they've never met or have never really interacted with in a deeper sense. They need to not be afraid to ask for help from a professional, because that is something that needs to be dealt with that way. I guess that's what I would say.
Okay, well, again, thank you. That's great. Okay. Thank you all for your answers. With that, I would like to lighten the mood a bit after one final, I guess, sort of challenging question, which is to bring it back to SWAID, which is how we started this whole thing off. What has been the biggest challenge of running SWAID Vegas? Summer's eyes just got wide as hell.
I don't know what it is.
Ooh, I have an interesting answer.
Okay, go for it.
All right.
I think this is an interesting challenge, and I think it's something that we've handled, but I think it's something that speaks to other charities and mutual aids and systems, is that I think there is something that happens psychologically when you are in an organization that helps others, because I think a lot of the times people can start to identify themselves as a helper and savior, and start to identify the people they're helping as needy people or servant people who should be grateful, people who should who are unable to help themselves. Sometimes it comes from a place of maybe it started as a good thing, but I think that after a while of doing that, psychologically, you can start to experience resentment. You can start to experience a feeling of superiority, a feeling of being better than other people. And I think that happens a lot in a lot of charities, especially charities that position themselves in that way. It's something that we actually talked about really, really early on with SWAID as something we wanted to avoid. And it's something that we keep in check with each other as much as we can, because we don't ever want to feel like we don't want to position ourselves as in that way. I don't think it's healthy for either party.
It's actually a really good point, because I had a mentor a while back who was telling me, if you ever feel like you're trying to help people, that you're already putting yourself in a position where you're above them, and where you are holding a position of authority that like believes that you know something or have something that they don't have. And they told me, like, don't ever try to help people. Stop yourself from helping people. Like, give people things that you have, like give of yourself freely, but like never help people, because helping people elevates you to a position above them. And like, like you need to see yourself at all times, like no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are, as like the same as other people, as like, being with other people, and if you ever start to see yourself as like helping other people realize that you see yourself as elevated above them. And I was like, that blew my fucking mind. I won't lie. Like, I was like, that's totally true, because anytime you are ever seeing yourself as like in a helping position, it's a belief that you know or have something that another person doesn't know or doesn't have. And like that is a position of authority and entitlement and belief that you are something that they are not. And I also think that definitely goes against the spirit of like mutual aid.
No, those are actually fantastic answers. Thank you both. So then again, to actually sort of lighten the mood, because I know we've talked about some dark stuff, what is your like go-to, like, I don't know if you have like a comfort food or like perhaps like a post-work ritual, like how do you each like to relax, decompress? Like, do you go somewhere for a burger, or like I need a milkshake, or I need like my favorite soda or juice or whatever? Like, you go for a walk? Like, what's your process for when you're done?
Done.
I'm trying to keep it relatively safe for work.
What are we done with? We know when we're done.
When you're
Summer,
done
when
with
are
the
you
sexual
done?
hanky-panky stuff. There you go.
Oh,
okay.
when we're done with like work.
Yes, work.
I find that for some reason after work I'm always in the mood to talk to somebody. I'm always like kind of like buzzing with energy still, because I like really ramp myself up. Part of like the job is like getting in a good headspace and being like a super good team player, and like having high like being really empathetic and like trying to figure out where everybody's at and like trying to move everything along, and that buzz does not go away for several hours. And so I think sometimes I
Okay.
need to like immediately afterward like hang out with some friends.
I was just figured that's because I was like, I'm extroverted. So I was like, oh, like I'm an extrovert. So people were around me. So now I'm energized and I'm like,
I just haven't turned off the part of me that's good at it yet. So I'm like, I really want to like talk to somebody. I want to like tell somebody all about my day. But that's a me thing.
Yeah.
All right.
I can confirm that. Yeah, Cody, you are super bubbly and excited after scenes. You're very happy. It's really cool. It's a what's it called? Encouraging, I guess. You know what I mean? When you see that, I think I've just been doing this for 14 years, so I'm just like, I gotta go. Like, you know, I'm like I want to get a burrito and like hang out.
All right. So your thing is a burrito. Cody's got to talk to someone.
Yeah, Cody.
I think that's
never
great.
like that. I'm never just like, hey, fuck off, bye. Like I'm always super nice to everybody, hang out for a little bit. But like realistically, yeah, I want to go home and like hang out at the house, play video games with my friends on the internet and all that kind of stuff. You know, that's my jam.
Okay.
understandably.
All right.
Oh
And then,
no, it kind of depends on the day.
oh,
I
okay.
always am hungry. I am always hungry.
Yeah.
Well, that's my next food. Sorry, my next question, not my next food. Good Lord, I am tired.
That is my next food.
Yes. But like, okay, so then, what's everyone's go-to comfort food? Like, what's that one food that you just can't live without? It doesn't have to do with work or anything, but just like, what is that one comfort food where you're like, oh yeah, everything is right with the world now?
It's honestly fried chicken, but then like for many years I'll be like a vegan or a vegetarian, and then I'll like snap out of it and eat like a lot of fried chicken, and then I'll go back to it.
I'm just imagining like eating this like tofu stir fry. Like, you know what? This is really delicious, but my soul is
Not
telling
the
me I need
same.
fried chicken.
Yeah, oh no, that's exactly it. Like I'll be eating something like that and I'm like, this is good, it's really good. But, you know, it's not fried chicken. And then one day I'll snap out of being a vegetarian for a while and I'll eat like quite a bit of fried chicken, and then I'll go back into it. I go through phases.
You could totally do a fried chicken stream one day. I was like, all right, hey, we're just eating fried chicken. Oh no, all the grease, and like there you go.
No, literally like a mukbang shit is like huge.
Yeah, it's popular.
People
Like
love
I'm
that.
I'm not even really joking. You could get away with it.
I put a couple of videos of porn star mukbang on Pornhub. You can look up porn star mukbang right now. There's a couple of them that I put up on there. No, I'm not in any of them. It's just me asking questions, just like this while I feed porn stars pizza. So
Oh yeah, this video is so getting demonetized, but I'm loving this. This is great fun. Who wants to go next with like their solid comfort food?
Pizza.
Sorry?
I don't really have one because every time I get into a specific food, I eat too much of it and then I get sick of it. So
Really?
because I don't have a whole lot of self-control in that department. So if I get it, like there's a new restaurant and like there's a food there I really like, then I eat that for, every like at least a few times a week until I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of over that. I'm into something else now. So yeah,
Wow,
I don't have
all
a
right.
great answer for that question.
That was last week's food.
Yeah, that was last week's food.
Oh
Yeah.
no. Oh, you chew up your food and spit it out like bubblegum, proverbially, that is.
I'm definitely there's a specific Mexican joint out here that I cannot stop eating and won't stop eating.
Love that place.
Yeah, we've all been there together. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Yeah, it is the greatest taco / burrito Mexican food place in Vegas, in my opinion, and it's really good.
If I ever
So
get to Vegas, you'll have to
literally-
take me there because
dude.
I love
Oh, dude.
food.
Oh, dude, yeah, I'm gonna take you. Like it's my after gym ritual. I try to I go to the gym. I order 3 giant burritos. And I
Jesus.
eat one there, and then I take the other 2 home and eat them before I go to sleep. Yeah, that's my ritual.
I love the planning of that ritual. It's
oh
like,
yeah,
all right,
it is-
okay, I'm
it
done.
is-
Okay, I'm going to the gym, working out. Okay, now I need a burrito, and now 2 more for later. That's
Hell
beautiful.
Yeah, 'cause
I
gotta
love
think
that.
ahead. Yeah.
Oh, that was wonderful. Thank you. And again, thank you all so much for doing this. I know some of what we talked about was difficult, but thank you for, speaking out against a lot of stuff and informing people about not only SWAID Vegas, but the sex worker industry in general. This has been not only informative for me, I hope it's been informative for anyone who's listening or watching right now. And thank you all for being available and working on this. I well and truly appreciate it. Keep up the fantastic work with SWAID. All the links for it will be in the description down below. But again, thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having
Dude.
me.
I'm glad we met on the internet.
Yeah, there you go. Hi, Bother Brigade. Thank you once again for tuning in to an episode of Progressive Profiles. And thank you once again to my guests, Codi Vore, Summerheart, and Xander Corvus, for being on the program and talking about some very difficult things. But, I hope people learn something about this, about the actual industry and about trafficking and all these sort of things that we maybe don't want to talk about when it comes to this product that we consume. And so again, for everyone who watched this, especially here to the end, thank you very much. But I also got to give a shout out to my patrons who, for some reason, continue to support me over on Patreon. And if you would like to do the same, a link will be down in the description down below. And for our lovely guests, all their safe for work links will be in the description down below, as well as a link for SWAID Vegas. You can send them some donos, help some people in not just Nevada, but elsewhere, because turns out it's kind of necessary. And isn't that just so unfortunate? I think that definitely is what's bothering me today.